All right, God's vibes. We have a special guest with us today. I wish you could see her. This is my dear friend Rachel, and she always does the hands emoji that's like waving at you, and we have so much fun connecting with each other. But she is for sure a joy bomb that you're going to get to experience today. She's got so much wisdom to share with you. Welcome, Rachel, to the God's Vibes podcast. Tell us who you are.
So my name is Rachel Poole. Thank you so much, Juliana, for having me today.
You're welcome. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about you.
So I am born and raised in San Marcos, Texas, and for a career, I do human resources, and I also have a side business. I'm an independent contractor for HR services for small business owners in Texas.
That's amazing. So you're a purposed person.
I am. I
You
am.
sure are. Well, what I love to hear about, I'm always so curious about people's journey with God and how that relationship got started. So can you take us on a journey of what that's been like for you?
So born and raised and still faithful Catholic,
Okay.
my religious faith. And I've always been curious about, here more so within the last, I would say, year,
Yeah.
about Bible and reading, getting closer to God and what does it mean to center God in everything that we do. And so I started about a year ago kind of picking up on clues, and I just had this heartfelt nudge to go and seek those answers for myself. I've always believed in God, and I have enormous amount of faith,
Yeah.
all my life, but I haven't, I always say I'm embarrassed to say, but I haven't read the Bible as much as I should have been all this time. And
Yeah.
so that's new to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of where I started, and where I am now is different.
Okay. That's amazing. And then tell folks that don't know how we got connected, because I feel like this is hilarious now knowing so
Oh
much
my
of your
gosh.
past context.
So, I've been I relaunched a different business about 3 years ago. For the first 2 years, it was just kind of trial and error, tapping into different things. I have, the great thing about age was we're seasoned with experience. So I have a lot of different types of experiences.
Yeah.
And so I relaunched something different. And then I wanted to network in the local community, more into the Austin area.
Yeah.
So we found a group, networking group. It was very different than what I normally attend, and I said I'm just going.
Yep.
So I went. I didn't know anybody.
Yep.
Just about all the women there were very much younger than myself, very different demographic, and just different people, and wonderful women, very nice and welcoming. And I'm standing there, and I gravitate to a couple of people, and people are coming in. And then I hear this other girl join the group. It was a little small group, about maybe there was 3 or 4 people there. And somebody walks in, kind of like, I think it was almost to the right of me.
Uh-huh.
And I hear her say, "Hey, blah, blah, blah." And she starts talking. And I'm like, okay, where did this girl come from? And then I heard the conversation about church. And then I heard the words prophetic word, and I
Mhm.
heard about God. And I'm like, who is this girl talking about God at a networking event? I'm like, and so I started getting very nervous, because that's something that I didn't know how to do, right? When you go to
Yeah.
network, it's all about business. You don't
Right.
get into that. And I'm like, who is
Yeah.
this girl talking about that? And I'm like, okay, don't turn to the right. Don't make eye contact.
Oh
Just
my
keep
gosh.
going. And I didn't want to even acknowledge. I'm so embarrassed. And I'm like,
Oh my
who
gosh.
is she? Don't make eye contact. So you won't have to have that conversation here.
Right.
And so, but and it was you.
Yeah.
And you were so,
Yeah.
so
Spirit
uplifting
girl
and
talking about God at
excited
an event.
and calling. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't say anything else, and I didn't get introduced. I didn't introduce myself and such. And so, but after that event, as I normally do, the people I connect with, I send, hey, it was great to meet you, da 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 da.
Yeah.
And I thought about this one girl that talked about God. And I said, who was she? And then I remembered the name. I said, let me go on Facebook and see what she's about. And so I started following your content and getting to know you more. And then I followed you on Instagram and I was hooked.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, what a missed opportunity. But I still met her per se.
Yeah.
And here I am now.
Isn't that amazing? I'm like, you were bamboozled and you didn't even know.
I know. I was like, oh my
So
gosh.
good. Oh my God, I love it. I feel like it's so funny. Like Shelby
It
was
is.
talking the other day about how she was like, your voice just used to annoy me and now I'm like obsessed with it. Like I don't understand. So like how people get connected is hysterical because it's always God, but it's just amazing
Yes,
how it
it
how
was. It was. And I
yeah.
just kept on. I'm like, wait a minute, there's something here.
Yeah.
Um, and I looked around and I'm like, I always end up coming back to yours and I'm like, nope, this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. So I've been behind the scenes for a long time and then
Yeah.
other opportunities presented themselves and
Yeah.
here we are at this
Yes.
podcast.
I love it. It's amazing. It's so neat to see in hindsight. Like you would have had no idea in this one encounter that it would turn into this today, which is so awesome.
No, and it was totally something that I would never have entertained going to at all.
Yep.
In fact, I remember coming back, I'm like, yeah, that's not the group for me. They're way too young and
Yep.
they're into the city life and yeah, that's not my group. I felt so out of place and I felt like, yeah, I don't know. I was very uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but it's just so uplifting now to see that when we put ourselves in those uncomfortable places, you don't know, even if it takes a year later, how it could come full circle and just, flourish into something bigger than what you ever expected.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like you just unpacked some keys for some folks, right? So it's
Yes.
like, if I could reiterate it, and you can correct me if like any of this is different, but it's like you have this prompting to go to something that you wouldn't normally go to. And you're like, and you probably had resistance leading up to it, right? Like it's not like it was just
Oh,
down the
yeah.
street. You actually had to like drive pretty far to come. So you're
Yes.
like going to this event, you feel totally out of place, especially when you get there, which at any point you could have just left because you're like, this is just not gonna work for me, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
you stayed and then you had a weird encounter that you could have just like overlooked, but it kept like coming back to you,
Yep.
right? And you just kept listening to what was just what that discomfort was and what was uncomfortable, and you kept seeking it out. And I feel like these are keys, right? Like show up and do the thing that is out of your comfort zone and that you wouldn't normally do because it's not random that you're being led
It's
there.
not.
It is not
Yeah.
random at all, right? At
No.
all. At all.
No.
And what you don't know, which is hysterical, is that God had me on a mission pretty much all last year to be going to networking events. And I didn't catch on to his mission for a minute, right? Probably like a few months in, I'm like, what are we doing here? But he was sending me to networking events to like minister to people, which is hilarious, right? But I was like undercover somehow, right? So it wasn't necessarily
Yep.
like networking or like promoting what I do in any sort of way. It was just
Right.
encouraging people, right? Or
Yep.
having really different conversations with them. So I'm like, this is so funny that like you were one of the
Well, I received the ministry for sure.
best, right? Like it's like when he sends you, you have no idea what the mission is. You just show up and you're like,
No,
right?
it was just so random. And I'm like, yeah. And then it's just flourished, right? And
Yeah.
I'm so glad I went through it. Even I think they had like a little get to know team building or icebreaker kind of a thing. I was so out of sorts. I'm like, what am I doing here? I got to get out of here. This
Oh
is
my
not for me. But I stayed it through, and
God.
I'm glad I did. I'm glad
So
I did because it
good.
led me here.
Yes. It's amazing. So talk to me too. So you're in the God's Vibes Mastermind now. And for people
Yep.
who don't know what that's like, I just want you to unpack for them what led you to say yes to that, right? Because to some degree, you didn't know what the experience was going to be. So what led to this next yes?
So I was intrigued for sure about, my original question to myself was, what I have been doing all the things prior to going in circles, ending up at the right back at square one, going again, and it was madness.
Yes.
And mostly in my business journey, but also in my life as well, to include relationships and finances and all of it. I felt like this is my transformation phase, if you will,
Yeah.
you know, at my seasoned part of my life. And I thought about, well, what would that look like? What does that even mean? And I even think I reached out to a couple of people and I asked, do
Yeah.
you know what it said? You know, what does it mean by putting God first? Like, what does that mean? Does that mean just read the Bible? Like, how
Yeah.
do I do that? I wanted to know how,
Yeah.
because I have faith in and I believe in God, but I didn't know how. And I said, I can't do this by myself. I can't. I don't know where to start. And it's very sacred and I want to do it the right way, or, you know, I need guidance to kind of speed up this process and make sure that I'm right, doing it the right, you know, doing it in the right method or order. And so, you know, after when I was listening to your content, you presented the master class and I had gone in there and I'm like, I need to save up money for that.
Yeah.
And one day, I said, one day I will purchase that, but I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Let me stay here, still in the background, kind of look at the, you know, I love the free challenges that you offer.
Yeah.
Stepping into that, you know, I think you have some other type of webinars or something you know, I was exposed to those and I'm
Yeah.
like, surely the master class would really beneficial, you know, benefit me in what I'm trying to achieve here. And
Yeah.
then I think you had the next enrollment. I'm like, this is it. And I waited because I second guessed it the whole time up until the last day. I'm like, reach out to her and see what it's about, what the payments are.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, and of course, I'm trying to figure out how to navigate where I am in my life and, you know, with financial struggles and relationships and all of this stuff. How am I going to invest in this right now? And
Yeah.
I'm like, but I need it. And I'm like, but I don't have it, but you need it. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and just reading what it would bring to my journey
Yeah.
was what sold it to me. The how, and there was a structure
Yeah.
of how to begin, you know, the 4 steps. I think it's investment, activate, and, you know,
Yeah.
elevate.
There's
There's formula.
yeah, so in the God's Vibes Mastermind, there's
Yes,
these 4
pillars.
modules that are helping you shift into God's vibes, right? So
Yes,
it's
yes,
activating your identity. It's helping you really step into your authority, right? And really co-create with God. And it's
yes,
helping you expand your influence and multiply that in the world,
yes,
right? So there's all of these different keys because you really need that foundation of knowing who you are in God. And that's another one similar to like, how do I put God at the center of my life? Well, how do I know who I am in God? Also, like,
mhm,
how? Right? Like, I think
right.
I know who I am, but now I'm making now I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know who I am. So
Well,
how do
and
you move
yeah,
in God, right? And then it's like, okay, now that you have an identity in God, how do you move in God's power and partner with him? Like that's a whole counterculture, right? Like you don't even you if you've never done that, if you don't know who God is really as a person, right? If you don't know
right,
who you are in God and his nature, then you
right.
probably don't know how to partner with him, let alone start walking that out consistently in a way that you feel confident and bold enough to step out courageously into the things he's called you to. So these are really all building on each other. So it's
Yes.
great for somebody that's like a baby believer to anybody that is even seasoned to go back through and be like, okay, this is bringing legs to help me run this race that I didn't even know was possible. So I love that you're saying that there's 4 things that were really speaking to you. Like that would be so great to know that there's a structure and that I'm building something, that I'm progressing somehow in this longing of your
Yes.
heart, which was to put God at the center. So good.
Right. And it starts at the beginning. I think the biggest thing I've hung on to, I've hanged on to was building a solid foundation with God at the center of the life. And I'm
Yeah.
like, and so those 4 pillars have been so beneficial for me on where to begin and how to grow into the next step and the next step. Of course, I'm going to have to go through it again because you always refining it, right? You never really get to that expert level, if you will, but
Totally.
going back and redefining it, refining it for somebody is huge. And I have just gained so much wisdom from the 4 pillars for sure.
I love. So it was what got you to that yes? Because you said you were on the fence all the way up till the day before. So what was
You
finally
know,
like, I've got to do this? Like what happened there?
I was tired of going in circles, to be honest. And I knew that overcoming, a lot of my own fears, my own limiting beliefs, I was in my own way.
Yeah.
And it was something I had to do for myself.
Yeah.
And I had to put myself first. Oftentimes, as women, we don't do that.
Yes.
But I can only be um, a better leader, a better mother, better friend, partner, wife, if I build that solid foundation for my next phase of my life. And I just said I have to do it. I just had a God gut feeling, that was led that I had to do it. And so I did. And I'm so grateful that I'm here.
Me too. Well, and it's so neat too. So you were saying in Courage Co, we have these monthly challenges and master classes,
Mhm.
and you show up to those and you're like, oh my God, every time. So to your point, it's like that in some ways could be a teaser to that. You can just have a sense of,
Yes.
wow, like this is going to take some time to actually absorb and
Yes.
process and walk out. It would be great to have coaching or support or a process or a structure to do that, which is the mastermind. So you can get that masterclass. The cool thing now is you get all of those replays for free just as part of being a mastermind.
Oh, yes.
Like you get all of these new trainings just by being in the mastermind, which is wild. So tell me, you get plugged in there. Is it what you expected? Like what happened when you got in there?
It was, but it wasn't. I knew,
Okay.
I've attended other types of more limited time master classes or webinars, if you will, but it
Yeah.
was so different because I think in the master class, what I found, the first of all, the support and the ladies in there are just so inspirational and motivating, and you can immediately relate to everyone in that group. It
Yeah.
is not about, oh my gosh, how would I say? It's not about look at me and what the world has us doing with other webinars. And I mean, I have attended so many,
Yeah.
and it's not like that. This masterclass and the women in there truly are there to support you as a person in your journey with God and
Yeah.
nothing else.
Yeah.
And I just find that so refreshing because it's not about anything else but that. Um, so I wasn't expecting that, but I'm glad that that's how it is. And then I didn't expect a lot of inner work behind the scenes that
Yeah.
you only can do.
Yeah.
You can share, which we're all, you do a wonderful job about, asking us to share our testimonies and all of that stuff. And it's just wonderful to hear how people are progressing through their journey. And but I forgot my train of thought there. Yeah, I mean, you just get to share, but it's something that you have to do. That's where I was going.
The
You
inner work.
have to do the work yourself, the inner
Yeah.
work. And
Yeah.
it's very intimate with your own specific relationship with God itself, because everybody's life is different.
Yeah. How cool too. Like what an answered prayer, right? So like you come into the God's Vibes Mastermind and now you have group coaching every week. So it sounds like felt safe there pretty quickly, right? And like felt like these women weren't here to compete with you.
Yes.
They weren't here to, one up you in some kind of way or like say how far along they are in the program or any of that, any of what could be in other programs. It's not anybody getting ahead. Like we're all like on a journey running this race together and supporting each other
Yes.
100% authentically and transparently, right? And a lot of times uncomfortably so. Like there's days where it's vulnerable and it's hard and there's like something that the content is inspiring and exposing, but then you're in a space where it's like somebody else is like, me too, or like that totally helped
Right.
me. Or when you said that, that really made me think of this, or like I'm so inspired by like what you are doing and how you are showing up. And now that's encouraging me to do this. And it's just amazing how God is working. And then in the content, what's really interesting too is what you're saying is you get to really go on this deep dive with God, but it's guided, right? So it's not like you have to ask anymore, like, how do I do that? Where do I
Right.
start? Now it's almost like opening a well, right? Like it's like
Yes.
treasure hunting. Like there's so much that you get to do in God. And I feel like that's a beautiful thing because this isn't something where you just arrive, right? But it's building a
Mhm.
relationship. And when you have that, you have everything you need a lot of the time,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And there's, and the, the beauty of it is it's, it is self-paced, as like you said, it's not a checklist, and it's not, oh, I'm finished now. Not at all. I actually have skipped around some because depending on what I'm going through or the tests that come, of life, you can go back and look and say, oh, I remember that. Let me go read or go back and brush on that topic, and that helps you guide you through how to seek God and how to approach whatever you're going through at that moment. So I love that part of the masterclass too.
You had some really great takeaways on this last call that we just had from a lot of the work that you've been doing. Do you want to share any of those? Because I feel like it would give some context to that inner work, but something that you feel comfortable sharing, whatever that might be.
Yeah, no, I knew you were going to ask me that. I'm like, am I going to share it or am I not? I knew you were going to do
Whatever
that to
you feel
me.
comfortable sharing. I know it's a different kind of, to your point, a different intimate space over in the mastermind, which is beautiful. But whatever you're comfortable sharing here, maybe a lesson that you've already learned, whatever that is that you feel.
No, absolutely. I'm very transparent, and so I'm going to share. I already had decided to share it.
You're like, dang it.
I know. So, when I started once I started going in the master class, one of the things that I've been committed to, and my daily 5, which you talk about that, is to read the word of God every day and meditate. And so I do that every morning. And so as I'm going along, I started, I think even from the beginning when I joined, I started feeling like I was losing relationships, and relationships were starting to fall out of my radar and out of my life. And I can say that today, a lot of relationships are gone. Most of them are. And I was starting to feel like, what happened? Where are these people? What happened to my friends? And what happened to these connections? And I felt alone, but I just kept reading, the Bible and my journey. My biggest takeaway is this is a season for me to seek God first. That's what I originally had started out to do. So obviously, God was going to allow that to happen, and answered my prayer because I need that foundation. And so, removing all those, I don't want to say distractions because that's not the right word, but removing that for now so I can truly focus on what I'm building to do, which is seek God in everything I do, was just an eye opener. I'm like, okay, I get it. This is where I'm supposed to be. And there'll be different connections, or there'll be a reconnected at a different level.
Mhm.
Um, I do have some relationships still. And because I'm in this master class, I have set some boundaries with
Yeah.
some of them because I'm really 100% committed to doing something different. And so I didn't have to, but I caught myself saying, hey, listen, in a conversation I had, I said, hey, listen, I'm in this master class and I just can't engage in this type of conversation and engage, I can't engage in what you're saying
Yeah.
because I am learning a different manner, which is gratitude, praise God in everything we do. And I
Yeah.
just don't have anything to share. And so it was my way of saying, I'm not going to complain.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to engage in that conversation because I have a very different, I'm in a different part of my journey right now, and I have to glorify God regardless to what's happening around me.
Yeah. I love this. I'm still so proud of you, right? Because it's such a hard thing to do when you're in a conversation to assert a boundary, to address something in love, to really
Yep.
stand for what you stand for and be about what you're about, right? To literally practice what you preach. Like so many
Hmm.
people can preach, but not many actually become their preach, right? So when you're in the God's Vibes Mastermind, right? Like you're hearing about how powerful our words are and how they are
Yes.
really creating your reality, and how if you start giving your time, your energy, your focus to something, and in particular, if it's going in a negative direction or a direction that you do not want to partner with, that is what
Right.
you are inviting more of into your life. Like it literally is that serious, but I don't think we take it that seriously. Right.
No.
And so you just saying, hey, like I can't engage in this kind of conversation, but I would love to talk about this. Do you have any updates on that? Or you know what I mean? You can steer it in a different direction. So I
Yep.
find myself doing this with people that gossip. I'm like, hard pass. No, like you're going to be talking about gossip. I mean, you're going to do it about me, obviously, but I don't engage in that way. Like if
Yeah.
you're not comfortable talking about that to this person if they were present, then don't. I'm not going to lend you my ear. What I can
Right.
encourage you to do though is pray for that person, right? And
Yep.
intercede for
Yep.
that person and build them up, right? Or go
Yep.
speak to them directly. I can encourage you to do
Yep.
that. And if you want to talk about this, like I'm game, let's go, right? But it's
Right.
actually a loving thing, and it's modeling a new way of being to people too. And it's also giving yourself permission and passing the test really to go to this next level that you say that you're about, right?
Right.
Tests
Right.
come all the time, and it's time to start passing some. Do you know what I mean? Like unless you want to circle the mountain again, or just
Yeah. No.
hang with people, let's say, that don't truly care about you. And this could be in more than one. These could be great people, but not great people for you, right? So these could be
Right.
people that just want to pull on you and just take from you. This could be people that just want to get, just a vent. They just want an ear. They just want to vent to you and just project what's going on in their life, but don't even have any interest in asking about you and how you're doing at all, right? They just
Oh, yes.
suck
Yes.
life out of you and have nothing to contribute. And it's like,
Yep.
unless you set boundaries with those people, they will keep showing up that way.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
unless you're clear about what you do want, you won't do that. So the
Right.
beautiful thing is that I don't have this, what you're encountering is like, I don't have this fear of missing out because I know I'm not missing out because I am literally living in everything that God told me. He is
Yes.
doing my prayer and I know it, as uncomfortable as it is, because this is very uncomfortable. And I don't know that you're speaking to how uncomfortable that is and how hard that is. But when
Oh,
you
yeah.
actually just trust, okay, God is moving and I'm willing to allow Him to bring the right people, and you're experiencing some of that already in the mastermind. Like, this is what the right people in your corner feels like.
Hmm.
This is what
Right.
having people that like care about you, pray for you, build you up, point you to where you're capable of going. Like that's what this
Yep.
looks like, that's what this feels like. And so if that is available, why would I give all my time, energy, and effort to these things that don't do that? It makes no
Yes.
sense at all, right? But without that context, you can't assert that in the same kind of way. So this is huge in like a very short period of time. This
I
is a
know.
huge breakthrough, right?
Yes. Well,
So
and it's
good.
come full circle, exactly what I prayed for and was seeking. I'm here now. And it did happen in a short amount of time. And I'm like I said, I keep saying, well, I pray every day, God renew my mind and open my heart. And I'm just really am grateful for how much what my journey so far.
So good. Talk to me too about the content and the journey and the experience, because some people are like, "Oh my God, there's so much content." So talk to me about what that is, because you guys get so much, it's sort of bananas, right? Like the content is designed to be 3 months, but like you're saying, you get coaching for a full year and access to the content for a full year, but then all these bonuses too. So talk to me about what it's like when you see all of that. Like what happens?
Well, it's overwhelming for sure. And like, where do I begin and what should I work on first? Because you have I think you even provide some journal prompting for gratitude and all this other wonderful stuff. You have the 3-day challenges, you have additional master classes, then you have the little snippets of the audiobook. Like there's just so much, right, that we can access at our fingertips. But I think I reached out because I'm a check off type of person. I got to go in order and, I got to get it done and complete it. And I was falling behind because I know it's, recommended certain modules at a certain week. And I felt like I got off the wagon. I'm a whole 7, 8 videos behind. How am I going to do this? But I think you said, go at your pace. There's no order. There's no rush. It's at your whatever you're led to take in. And so I kind of just stepped back from that and have been doing it just on my own and going through the modules. But it's a journey. You can't look at the stuff and think of it like all the other traditional webinars or master classes out there or curriculums. You can't think of it that way. This is a very personal journey of specific to you, and you just take in what you can and really sit with it and apply it. That's the thing. You can go through it real quick and follow along, but if we're not applying it or meditating on it and self-reflection on it, then you're really not going to grow into the next phase. And I think that that's huge, and I think that's what's different with this masterclass. And that you get the opportunity to grow, because it doesn't end after the 3 months. You do get access for the entire year, so you can go back again and refine everything and keep building on everything and growing into those areas.
So good. I love this too, because it's just making me think of like when you approach a meal, like some people are like, I'm gonna start with dessert, so they're gonna just go do all of the bonuses, whether
Yep.
those are
Yep.
journal prompts, there's 2 courses that you get as bonuses in there, or
Yep.
there's a whole section just on self-coaching, because the narrative
Yep.
in the mind is huge. So some people just want to spend time and hang out in the bonuses, quite honestly. Some folks loved the prep week and they just want to live there for a while.
Yep.
Or you
Yep.
can take on a whole module. Like if you know that God is really working with you in business, you can hang there. If you know that God is
Yep.
really working with you in partnering with him for real, you can spend a lot of time in that module. Right.
Right.
I had another gal the other day say that she spent like a whole week in one lesson because she had to like
Oh.
re-listen and re-listen and re-listen. She knew God was in there. She's like, what in the heck? Right? Like, what is happening? But her breakthrough was worth it. Like she broke off like years of stuff
Yep.
just hanging in one lesson for an entire week. And
Yep.
it was mind-boggling. So I love that everybody can take their approach. Like if you eat dessert first, game on. Like if
Yep.
and
I
the
was gonna
coaching
say
every
that.
week covers that, right? Like we somehow still weave in all of the lessons. It's wild how it happens, but it does every
Yep.
time.
You're like the Golden Corral, the big buffet, right?
Yes,
You just go and get whatever
the
you
healthy
want.
version, no, if there is
The
one.
healthy version. Yep.
And we
Exactly.
teach you to take what you need and what will like what you can digest. We teach you to do that.
Yep. Yep.
So talk to me too about what God has been showing you about what is next for you and what he's been starting to build with you from getting exposed to him and really walking with him in a totally new way now.
So I at the very beginning, I had little to very minimal um belief in myself. I kind of had lost my way and didn't have the confidence, the courage, to move forward in any way. And so now, I mean, I feel so much better. The belief is is coming back and stepping out into that journey. And so I've been really trying to be mindful of picking up, I call them signs, messages from God, and to lead me in the next direction, my next footsteps, and a lot of things have come up. I have had an internal gut feeling about working with youth again. That's been, and I haven't done that in 5 years, but I did it for 30 prior to that. And I just didn't know how to do that. And I just kept asking, it can't be it. And yes, it is it. But there's been a lot of signs and, messages that I feel that is my calling. And so that is what's next for me, is to continue to take steps forward in business with youth and in my industry, which is human resources, and pack that all together somehow. And, I've even added, based on biblical principles, and that's something that I would have never have done, because who am I to teach on that? But I feel like I have the foundation, and as long as I'm one step ahead and I have my heart in it, I will find the answers for young people. And I think that that's where I was missing. And I'm just so moved by the new spirit that has brought me, for sure.
It's amazing. I mean, what in the world? It's just so good. I'm like so
Yep.
blown away by this, because you probably couldn't have expected like that breakthrough, right? Like you're not coming in
No.
thinking about this at all, and here's God again trying to bamboozle you in the best way.
Well, and I've kept it separate, and you go full circle, going back to how I met you, I'm like, who's this girl talking about God? This morning, I went onto, my website, and I added, I always have put, I'm a Latina owned business, but I added, I am a Christian based Latina owned business. And I'm like, what am I doing? Why?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
so
this
I'm
whole
starting to be,
intersection of combining your faith, it's almost like that was a missing element. Like
yes,
I don't want to point, I know you probably know this part of my story, but it's like God had me release what I'm doing in the world until he was at the center of it. And I didn't know
yeah,
that until in hindsight, right? But
yeah,
I didn't want to be pointing people to these different outlets that would give them another addiction or another obsession,
exactly.
right? Like that would not point them to him, because what am I doing? I'm not really helping you, right?
Right, right.
I'm not. So it sounds like that might have been similar for you, where it was like, this has been why you were circling for so long.
Yes.
Like you didn't have the center to orbit around. Like it actually makes
No.
a lot of sense.
Yep. And we come full circle.
My gosh, it's so good. I'm like so
Yeah.
pumped about this. And the other piece too that I'm thinking about right now as I'm talking to you is that, and I'm curious if this has always happened, but it feels like God is giving you a lot of prophetic revelation and like foretelling and really showing you glimpses of the future. So has that
Yes.
always happened, or talk to me about that? Because it's really powerful.
Yeah, I think it has. I'm just very faith driven. I didn't know I was missing that other component. So when you add to it, I think that everything opens up, right? I am very in tuned, and I do get these glimpses of the future, and I don't know how they come, Juliana, they just do. And we won't share everything in this podcast. We'll have to circle back when it happens, because I know it's going to happen. I shared it with you already, so it will be a teaser.
Downloaded my future, which is great.
I downloaded your future too,
Right.
by the way.
It's like, how great is this? Like, what in the world? Like, God sent me to you, and then he sent you back to me. It's like,
Yep. So, but I have had those glimpses of the future, and it's remarkable that I'm excited, and it really is set on God being the center of everything.
yeah.
And I don't know, it just happens. I think I've always had it. I just didn't know to what degree until now that I'm here So maybe that's part of the journey as well,
Yeah,
is,
because there
you
is, and
know,
there's a section. I don't know if you've taken a dive into it yet, but there's a whole section just on the prophetic, right? So I'm like,
not yet.
oh, I'm like so amped for you to get into that now because it's like you do have the gifts, right? But it's like if you don't know, because everybody can hear God, but we're all receiving from God in so many
Hmm.
different ways. And so the best way that
Yep.
I interpret this is when you have your five physical senses, you've got spiritual senses though. And so you can
Yeah.
fine tune those. We're actually instructed to do so in the word. So it's not like special humans, right, can prophesy. All can, right? All can hear from
Yes.
God. And it's so important to be able to have somebody that can help you process and digest that and apply that to your life, right? So it's
Yes.
so amazing that you're like, I just do this and I just thought I was a weirdo, but
I
actually
know. Yeah. I'm
this is
like,
quite
okay.
powerful for my life. Like this is guidance for where I'm going. How helpful
Yeah.
is that? And learning
Hmm.
to trust that. So I
Yes.
equate it similar to for the longest time, right? I just learned in my life to ignore my intuition, right? Which now is the still small voice. This is a horrible habit to have. If anybody has this habit, break the habit.
Yes.
If you just start trusting the Holy Spirit, the still small voice, these promptings, right? You will be led into these good plans and purposes, right? And trust without having to overthink it, ask all the questions, get all the signs, just move and you'll get better and better and better at trusting it. But I had this habit of not trusting, right?
Yes.
So when it came to my relationship with God, one of the reasons that I believe that it felt like he accelerated me was because I was so committed to obedience. I'm like, I've lived a life ignoring my intuition and I've seen how that's gone, right? Like it looks the same
Right.
every time you ignore it to
Yeah.
one degree or
Yeah.
another, right? So now I'm like, I am just at this point so willing to just trust whatever prompting I get. And it's amazing what happens
Yes.
when you do that, but you can move and build so different. And then when you do that, you're so much more aware of how God is talking to you. He'll use
Right.
words, he'll use senses, he'll use a prompting, he'll sometimes be your voice. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yep.
talking to you or giving you an idea that clearly you couldn't have come up with on your own, or he's giving you wisdom that there's no way you could have accessed, right?
Oh
Or
yeah.
boldness and this courage to show up that you're like, what in the world? But when you're listening to him, you know to trust it. When you're not,
Right.
how could you ever?
Right. I've always had that intuition and, like you said, promptings and so forth.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things also that I've learned through here is, other than the relationships and focusing on the reading the Bible and stuff, is being still, right? I think you've
Oh
mentioned that
yeah.
several times.
Yeah.
You know, I've had to learn how to be still,
Our
and I think that
favorite.
that was, yeah, I think that was the whole removing of other stuff, because I had to be still to really take the words and apply them in my journey, because
Yeah.
before I was just going and going and going, trying everything and doing all the crazy stuff and just doing all the things,
Yeah.
and I wasn't getting nowhere.
Yeah.
And so it took me to skim all the way back and be still and start reading and listening to those promptings
Yeah.
and doing something with those. But yes, very excited, because I have seen glimpses of the
Yeah.
future for myself, and I'm glad. But I'm not, you know what the beautiful thing too is? I used to think when I had those things, I had to hurry up and get there. And
Yeah.
now I don't even, it's a glimpse in the future. And I think you say this all the time,
Yeah.
you know, it's done.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about that
No.
because it's coming. And
Yep.
that's it.
Yep. I often call it self-soothing, right? Because like my old unrenewed nature, yeah,
Mhm.
she was a future tripper.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
the phrase that I use around here, but it's you're constantly looking ahead and trying to get there, feeling like you're behind, going super fast, potentially
Yep.
the wrong direction, right? It's like climbing a
Yep.
ladder on the wrong building. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, what
Oh,
in
yeah.
the world? Like, I'm like going so fast and trying so hard, but I'm not even going in the right direction. Like, who am
Yep.
I helping here? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep. That's me. That's me.
Yes. Yes. And it's so relatable, which is what I love
Yep.
that you say this. But now, a way that I self soothe is like, God doesn't do one when you are born again as a believer, right? and you get a new heart. It tells you this in Ezekiel. So the desires in there from God, you can trust, right? Like he's not putting a desire in your heart to tease you. But when you've been burned enough in the world, you start to question what your heart is telling you, right?
Yep.
It does say in a different scripture, right, that the heart is wicked and deceitful. Who can trust it? Who can know it? Right.
Right.
So to me, there's like this interesting position of like, can I trust God with this desire? Does he even want me to have the desire?
Mhm.
Right. So I had to get to a place where I'm like, God put this desire in me. That's what he wants me to run with. Now he's giving me so much prophecy about this, and it's being affirmed in my life over and over. That's clearly the plot point that he put
Yes.
in BTS, is how I look at it, right? I'm like,
Yep.
okay, he gave me where I'm going. Done deal. It's inevitable. Like you, right? That's
Yep.
where we're going. So now I'm like,
That's where we're
okay, but
going.
where am I now? Because I've got to get
Yep.
honest about that. Like, where am I now? Because there's going to be things required for this trip, right? Like, I've got to know, like, is it warm over there? Like, what am I packing? Like, I've got to know, am I fit for this journey? Right. And if I'm not, which is something I can get honest about, how do I start closing that gap and partnering with God to get ready for that thing? Because what he
Yes.
doesn't want is us to be crushed by that promise. Right. So for some people, let me make this practical. Some people believe that they are here to write a book, let's say. Right. Okay, that's amazing, right? You see yourself over like plot point could be like God showing you speaking or talking about a book or whatever that might be, right? So now backtrack, like, where are you today? Do you write at all? Like, do you have a
I
Word
know.
document open anywhere on any device? Like, do you take notes? Do you journal anything? Like, writers write. Are you writing? Like, if he showed you
Yep.
you're a writer, are you actually doing what a writer does, right?
Right.
Or if he showed you that's where you're going, do you have people in your network that have done that before, right? Or like, are you laying out chapters, let's say, or really refining a message? Do you even know what you
Mhm.
would say? Because like if that's happening, you better get ready for it.
Mhm. I
That's
like
kind of
that
how I
too.
look at it, right? Like
Oh
if
yeah.
God gave you that promise today, would you be ready? And if the answer is no, then you get ready. And that
Yep.
changes how you close that gap, right? So instead of just trying to like
Yes.
run and get somewhere where you don't even know where you're going, you don't have a plot point. So like
Mhm.
now it's like, okay, I have a plot point, which if I just engineer this with God, it makes sense. Like he will continue to give me the strategies, the people, the resources, and I can't do any amount of worrying that'll make that work.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
my job
Yep.
is always like obey, right? Like activate the faith and obey,
Yep. Yep. I did
right?
it. And
That's it.
that's what I did.
Faith
I'm
and
like,
obedience. That's all we're doing.
yep. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
God
And
is
I
the
have no
how.
idea. I don't have the how exactly,
That's
right? I
God.
don't even have the
You
when,
don't need the
and that
how.
doesn't
Yep.
even matter.
Yep.
Just put it out there and, like you said, be obedient, have faith and just let it ride and see where, when you get there, it will come.
Yes.
God has already said that it will. So I'm
Well,
not
and
going
this
to
is the
worry about
beautiful thing about what you're sharing to give you context of this, right? Like how God brings it all together and works it for good. It's like you could look at your story and say that you're so full of wisdom and seasoned, as you
it.
said,
Yes.
right? And you had all of these amazing plot points and life experiences that probably can, to some degree, feel random. You're like, how on earth? Like, I've done so many things. Like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing, quote unquote. But God's
Exactly.
like, hey, like, while you were here, this is what I was teaching you. And while you were here, you were getting this skill. And while you were here, like, this is what I was revealing to you so that you could then do this thing. And he, like, somehow turns it into something that you're like, holy Moses, like, this actually
Yep.
makes so much sense. Here, I think that I'm wandering and I'm lost because wanderers are usually lost, right? Like,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
so I'm thinking I'm lost, right? But God's like, no, like I've been developing you, I've been preparing you. This all makes sense. And then when you get to this place that I've purposed for you, you're going to get it.
Yeah. You're like, oh, now I know.
Yeah. You're like, no
Yep.
wonder I'm an excellent person to now go minister to youth in all of these ways.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right. And it's
Right.
so empowering because then when you embrace your seasons versus run from them, right? When
Yes.
you do what's required in every season, you can truly know with confidence that you're ready for what is.
Yes.
If you're bailing out, trying to find shortcuts and like trying to get like a quick fix, it don't work.
It doesn't. I've
It
been
don't
there.
work. Yes. Yes. It
Yeah.
crumbles, right? It's like the building on sand versus rock. The one on sand sinks every time.
Yes,
You might
ma'am.
get it up. You might get it up. That sucker's sinking, and you don't know when it's sinking, but it is. Like, that's the promise. That's the
Oh
destiny
yeah.
of that, right? So it's like, unless the Lord builds it, it won't stand. So I've just gotten to a point where I've built enough, right? And like watch that play out that I'm like, that's exhausting, right? You can run hard at something and sacrifice so much and then feel totally unfulfilled and unsatisfied. I'm like, that is
Exactly.
not what God has for you. That's not the portion,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-mm.
he actually says that it's a blessing. He will bless you to enjoy the work of your hands. Like
Yes.
he gives you this
Yes.
gift to enjoy it. So sometimes people are like, oh, there's a narrative out there where it's like they just want to become an entrepreneur so they can have more freedom. I'm like, but that's actually not biblical. Like we're designed to work. There's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fulfillment in work, right? Like you
Yep.
don't just go
Yep.
retire. Like that's not a thing,
No.
right?
No.
That's a worldly thing, but that's not how we're actually wired. And if you go and speak with older folks, I love doing this. The wisdom that they will tell you is that they wish they had something to do. They're
Yes.
bored,
They're bored.
right?
I
Like
know.
they want to be working, they want to be useful, they want to be deployed in what they're here to do. And it's like, that makes so much sense when you can sit with it, right?
Yes.
And it teaches you, okay, I don't need to go at this crazy speed in the
No.
right direction. I can just fully embrace where I am, knowing that God is leading me to a good place that He already planned that I might show up there.
Yep.
So
And just
I
stay in
just
faith.
have to make sure that I'm showing up ready.
Yep. Every day. And
Yeah.
continuing to build that foundation, you know.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing what you're sharing too is if I stay ready, I don't have to get ready,
Uh-huh.
right? Like if I stay in relationship, I don't have to stumble. That's a great one for me. I'm like, right? It's God that keeps us from stumbling.
Oh yes, for sure. For
Right?
sure.
So I'm like, why would I not invest in that relationship? Like, so I'm literally God is all the positions. He's CEO, master coach, therapist, wonderful
Everything.
counselor, Prince of Peace. Like, I'm
Everything.
like, why would you not talk to him?
Mm-hmm.
Benefactor, like he's the guy that you're on his payroll. He pays you. So it's like, who are you gonna talk to? You know,
Yep.
like
Yep.
if somebody is prioritizing their boss over God, God is actually the one using your boss to pay you. So why not go talk to him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just wild how these things happen.
Very.
We get going, right? Like
I know.
there's no
Oh.
stopping us. But I think the powerful thing, why part of why we might even be brought to talking about this is think about the motive that's driving that behavior, right? The root of that is fear.
Mm-hmm.
The fruit of it could be anxiety, frustration, overwhelm, feeling behind. Like there's
Right.
fruitfulness, but the root of it is fear. So that's not building on the Lord's foundation, right? Like anything that you build in fear is not faith. So it's not of God,
Right. Right.
right? But
And
anything
that,
that you're
right.
building in faith, right? And faith moves different when you think about a pace. And that's why we talk about vibes. Faith is a very different frequency, right?
Absolutely.
Fear is like pushy and desperate and controlling
Desperate.
and manipulative,
Desperate.
right? But faith is calm, it is centered, it is wise, it is fluid, right? There's a flow to it.
Yeah, there it's a
Peaceful.
big difference. Big difference.
Yes. Yes. So that stillness part that you're highlighting and why that is so hard, because like truly too, the enemy of your soul knows that if you get still, you're going to connect with God. He's like, nah, I can't
Yeah.
have that. Then that'll be a powerful human, and I don't want any of those walking the earth. So let's just cut that off, right? So it's like when that's why you get so much resistance to being still.
Mm-hmm.
So for me personally, that drives me to want to be still because I'm like, ooh, if I have the more resistance I have, the more I need to do it, is how I view
Yeah.
it now.
True.
But
True.
that stillness is where you develop that new frequency. It's almost like you get the new operating system and the system upgrades every time you're in God's presence.
Yes.
And then you
Yes.
move from the wisdom, from the strategy, from the revelation, from the insight that he offers in those times. And it's a totally different outcome. Like what you just shared is that you're so excited and have this joyful anticipation about what's ahead. And before you were like frustrated, overwhelmed, circling the mountain, feeling like a failure. These are very different realities.
very, and desperate, like, okay, I got to move on. I got to do this, got to do that. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not to do none of that. It will come. I know it's going to come, and that's it.
And that's a confidence, right? That you have in God. Like, because the world
Yes.
feeds and preys on desperation. And
Yes.
it's dangerous because all it takes is to be swept up in the wrong mission. And then you just waste years of your life. You waste finances. You waste so
Hmm.
much because it was never
Right.
designed for you. God can still
Right.
work it for good, but that wasn't the best,
No, no.
right?
And you have a little, I think we've talked about this before. You have a little bit of success in doing that, but it's not going to last. It's not sustaining at all.
That's it. So I think about it this way. It's kind of like the Jonah principle. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, do you want to get eaten by a whale and go on this like excursion that's actually not fun, or do you just want to do what God said? Because He's gonna bring you
Exactly.
all the way back to where you were when you resisted Him in the first place, and allow you to still
Hmm.
learn the lessons.
Yep.
Right? You can just make
Right.
it way more difficult,
Really.
right? It's like,
Yep.
oh
Yep.
no, like I'm over
No,
that.
no.
Lived
Yeah,
that one. We're good.
exactly. I'll pass.
Yeah, hard pass. Hard pass. So, what do you feel like God is gonna do just this year alone? What can you feel like He's starting to do for you?
Just more clarity and more confidence, really. I think for me, that was where I think he's going to continue to build on that. I'm going to continue to build on that just by, being faithful, is my belief and courage and stepping out and just resting in his promises. That's it.
So good. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
if anybody is new to the God's Vibes Mastermind, maybe to this content, what would you tell them if they're thinking about joining in this next round in July? We're going to start on July 10th. So, for anybody that's like, ooh, this is sounding interesting, or oh, should I? Because you were there, you lived that already. So, what
Oh,
advice
yeah.
do you have for them?
Don't overthink it and sign up. That's it. Trust us.
Yeah.
And really don't overthink it. And just be ready to renew your mind and open your heart, and the whole even from day one, you will be truly blessed, and so much clarity, peace, and joy will happen immediately.
Yeah.
So I would just say don't overthink it, and trust, and go on a journey with the master class, and for yourself with God.
Yeah. Amazing. And it sounds like too, it's been an answered prayer, right? Like you just knew that it was God. You were
Yes.
right. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
so if anybody feels like God is leading you here, it's not random. It keeps being
Nope.
reinforced. You feel like your mail's getting read every time you listen to an episode or something. This is only like
Yep.
very teensy bit of what actually happens in there. And it's
Yep.
still worth it, right? Like just think about like count the cost of what it's like to not invest in yourself. Count the
Oh,
cost
yeah.
of what it's like to not cultivate your relationship with God, to not build your life in orbit around Him, right?
Right.
On His firm foundation and orbit around Him. Like, what is
Oh,
that
yeah.
costing you? And consider it not random that you were led here, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
He's so good at
Yeah.
just orchestrating everything. So, I would
It
say,
does.
to echo you, if it's an answered prayer, respond to the call.
Yes,
Right? Like, if He is
exactly.
calling you, answer the call. Like,
Yes, yes,
because you don't
yes.
know what He has in store for you. And it's different for every single person in there. Different.
Right.
But He's
Very,
definitely deploying you. If I were to give it some key phrases, it's like acceleration is happening, right? Freedom and deliverance is happening, breakthroughs are happening, firm foundations are being
mhm.
established, like so much is happening, and it's all to deploy you into your destiny, into these great
Yes.
things that He has for you. And that is an urgent thing. Like we don't have time to waste to get on that track. We don't.
No,
Right? And
no,
it's like we need folks that are activated that can do what they're uniquely here to do. And there's not many folks that are training in how to do that or that are
no,
equipped to help train in how to do that. Right. So it's a really
exactly.
big deal. So I love that you're sharing that. I want to hear from you too. I asked this question when you were at the end of your life, many, many years from now on earth, right? You can't take any of the brilliance of what you create with you, right? Like you just truly live an eternal life, but you can impart wisdom, what would you tell people that would radically change the course of their life?
Oh my gosh.
Right?
That's a
That.
loaded question.
Are you surprised? Like,
I know. Let's see. Um, I think, I 100% agree with what you just said at the end. I think at the end of it all, right, when we're no longer here, I think our number one thing is to, how did you say it? To seek our purpose, to move in our purpose on where we're so destined to be at. God created us each and uniquely in his image, first of all, but he assigned us. We have an assignment
yeah,
and we must answer that call.
yeah,
And I think in today's world, very much, a lot of people are lost. A lot of people are in dark places. And I think more than ever in any other lifetime, I think this is when we need that the most. And so I would say, put God in the center of your life and answer the call to what you're destined to, do as an assignment from God.
yeah. It's amazing. Well, I have to just honor you and celebrate you. I am so incredibly proud of being on the receiving end of getting to witness you and your journey and your growth and how you lean in, how you continue to choose joy, how you continue to be this pillar for your family, for your partner, for your kids, for your leadership. You don't take any of it lightly. There's so much
No,
care, so much devotion, so much commitment that you truly layer everything in love. And it is phenomenal. And I can sense so strongly that God is truly activating you for such a time as this.
yes,
And I am so excited to be on the journey with you and that he figured out a way to divinely orchestrate us meeting and getting.
yes.
But I am so, so proud of you and so grateful and thankful that you shared so graciously.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much as well. Thank you so much. And yeah, we will be on each other's lives for a long time. We're not going
Yeah.
there.
You're
It's
like,
gonna
who's
be
stuck with who?
it's gonna be an amazing, you're stuck with me. I'm
Yeah.
telling you that right now. You're stuck with me. So, I look forward to continuing this amazing journey with you as well, for sure.
Amen. Well, how can people connect with you?
So I'm a Facebook type of girl. I love Facebook. So Rachel Poole is my Facebook. I do have, a website for the services that I offer. It's rachelrpoole.com. I don't do too much Instagram, but I go over there just to listen to you.
I go over there to stalk the humans.
Yeah, and that's it. But
Amazing. Yeah, so we will put all of that in the show notes as well. So we'll put your website, we'll put your Facebook. It's so fun. Like you're a rare breed. Not everybody loves Facebook these days.
I
It's
love
so good.
Facebook. I love it.
Well, thank you again, friend. We'll make sure that folks get connected with you.
Thank you, Juliana. Bye.
Bye.